Thanks for joining us for the Customer Experience Podcast. My name's Troy Batchelor, and we're going to be discussing client-centric best practices, tools, and ideas with today's top facility management leaders. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Please be sure to share it on any of your social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. If you have ideas for future podcasts or future interviews, please be sure to email me, Troy Batchelor at FrenchCompanyLLC.com, and I look forward to getting your feedback. Enjoy. Okay, thanks for joining me, Chris. I appreciate it. I know other folks may know who you are by just seeing your face, because we've seen your face a lot at Prism and RIFMA and a lot of other organizations we're a part of. And certainly I'll do an intro before we get started, but do me a favor and just take a few minutes, introduce yourself, tell us what company you're with.
So I'm president of National Filter Service, and started it 27 years ago and still manage it today, and along with a great staff and team here at the headquarters.
Fantastic. And you're based out of Virginia, right?
Based out of Fork Union, Virginia, just outside of Charlottesville.
So having been around the industry a long time, I know that obviously building relationships is a huge part of what we do. And early in those stages, you were sales, you were the CEO, you were the president, you were the phone answerer, you were the billing clerk, you were just about everything, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell us, if we'll kind of go off of what you were talking about before. Now, if you gave advice to your young self at that point in time, what advice would you give somebody new? I mean, think about all these people. One of the hardest challenges, I think, is the facility industry is not bringing in a lot of new blood. Yeah. And what advice would you give some folks that have taken the chance and are new to the industry?
Well, my biggest advice isn't as industry specific as it would be to young business people getting their business up and running. Probably the biggest lesson I've learned is that you're the one who created the vision. You're the one who led it to the point where you had all these other employees, and be it for selfish reasons or concern that others can do better, you need to stay the course and remain involved at just as much level as you always did, because you're the one that's leading it and leading where it's going. And
yeah, you should always still have a hand in, and I think let people understand that you have an understanding because you have done it all, right? Yeah. You don't sit in an ivory tower now. I know for a fact, having been in conversations with you over the last few days, I know exactly where you've been for the last few days. Is on a roof somewhere, right?
That's right. Yeah. All over, from Chicago to Boston and in between. I got to tell you, I stopped enjoying my business as much when I stopped doing those things. And just, I'm more engaged in understanding what my technicians go through from being back out on the rooftops more often, and really understanding where our problems are that we need to fix, that you can hear about behind the desk all day long, but without being out there and experiencing it, you really can't.
Now, did you do anything special as you were kind of growing up in the business to take special classes or?
Really no education. Only education I got after was at some point, I had two guys in the office and we were trying to figure out computers and literally printing work orders out of DOS, and went and took a Microsoft class just for Microsoft Office or something, just to learn how to use a spreadsheet. And
I hear you.
But you mentioned relationships. Worth mentioning. We've really grown this business off of relationships. I think that's true for almost everybody I've seen in the industry. When I go to Prism and RIFMA and different organizations like that and trade shows, as you know as well as I do, especially having been on both sides of the table, it is so much about relationships, and you do right by people. And I always told my children, if you just do what you said you were going to do, you'll have the highest paid for commodity out there. Right.
Tell us a little bit about the challenges that retailers or companies typically approach you with, or have you helped them resolve that helps really impact that customer experience in the stores or in the restaurants?
Well, we're always aware that there's multiple levels of customers before we get to our facilities manager. And there's the customer that goes in and buys a product. There's the customer that is the manager of the store. And then there's the facilities manager. And if any one of those people, especially starting at the bottom, working your way up, is not happy, then nobody's going to be happy with us. And they're not going to spend money on our services. And I was just in a Marshall's this past weekend where it's hot in the store. And I was up in Rhode Island, and the manager just said, I can't get anybody to help me get this air conditioning straight. Everybody's pointing fingers at everybody, and they pointed fingers at you, Chris. And so I went up on the roof, saw that it wasn't us, took them up on the roof with me, got them to go up on the roof with me, not only to see that it wasn't us, but that was just a start. And then we walked through, and I said, hear this compressor compared to all the rest of them on the roof. Something's happened there that's not supposed to.
Yeah.
We opened up 2 units that the whole month, the filters were completely clean. The units hadn't ran. Said, so I can tell you those 2 units aren't helping you cool the building. And then, so walking through that with him, when that was over, while I was with him, he sent an email to the facilities team saying, this is what I needed the whole time. This is the help I need to make my customers' experience better, because he had customers who, in the random surveys of customers, would email saying the store was too hot.
Yeah.
So the customer's unhappy because the store is too hot. They would email the manager, who is bonus driven, or they would give the bad score. And if they get any negative on their score, that affects their bonus. So the manager's unhappy. And then the facilities manager's been unhappy because he can't get that location service. So we're part of that whole big ball. And we just realized we need to make sure that everybody in that circle's.
And it's about taking the time to educate that person right there at that store level, so that they can better communicate to their team what the issues were and how to resolve them. Not that you were there to resolve it, or that was your job, because a lot of times we see technicians take that, well, that's not my job to do that. Well, you know what? It is, because ultimately that customer experience, and to your point, we may not be directly having conversations with that customer who writes the email because it was too hot, but everything we do in between will impact that customer's experience. And now that you've done that, it can positively impact the customer experience, which enhances the relationship. I mean, it all is a big circle.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. What are some of your tricks to the trade? I mean, you've got hundreds of folks out there in the field every day, and finding the right people, I think, is a big challenge, right? That is becoming a real hot topic right now, as well as just managing them on a daily basis. Tell us about some of the challenges that you deal with and how you continue to stay on top of that.
Well, our biggest challenge in this business is and has always been finding enough of the right people to get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially when you're in a world that's unskilled labor, it's a different pool even than when you're trying to hire technicians with journeyman cards. And everybody's experiencing it. I was in a customer's office with their team a couple months ago, and they asked me about how we're doing it. And so after I responded, I asked, well, why do you ask that? And they said, because every contractor we have is talking about labor issues. And they said they can't hardly get their stores cleaned because of, on the janitorial side, they just can't get people in the stores.
Yeah.
So it's affecting everybody. And it's, as everybody knows, it's pretty prominent in our industry, but it's prominent nationwide, the issues that I think are causing it. Then throw in 4% unemployment on top of it.
Yeah.
And I've heard it said before, but we learned it that throwing money at it doesn't really help.
No.
We took kind of a subcategory of technicians and bumped their pay pretty notably, and really got almost no change in the results that we were getting out of it. Mm-hmm. So you've got to find what stimulates people. And one of the things we've realized is it's not terribly exciting to go on a different roof, every hour or so and go up and change some filters and then drive to the next one. And we have to make it a job that we've learned to start finding ways to intellectually stimulate people and make it something they enjoy.
So as long as you've been in the business, right, I'm sure you've got one or two of those really funny stories that that you could share with folks that has a little lesson to it as to, this one story kind of sticks out in my mind about something that happened that I just would have never expected, and it led to this. You have one of those?
Off the top of my head, I don't have one that it led to, but I got more horror stories than I've got. Like I always tell people, you never know how much it costs to fix a train engine until your van got ran over by a train engine. We had a tech who literally fell asleep after a long day, honestly hadn't drank, pulled up, fell asleep on the tracks.
Oh my gosh.
And then a train hit him. And fortunately, the train wasn't moving very fast. And fortunately, he wasn't hurt. He walked and got out of the van, but cost us, I think, $200,000 in repairs to a train engine.
Holy cow. It's one of those things that you could have never predicted, right?
Yeah.
If somebody would have told you, hey, you're going to have to know how to do this, or you're going to have to learn about this, you're like, no way, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
That's when it happens. So you travel an ungodly amount, I would say. You're always in the road when I talk to you, going somewhere, and that's great. But, you also run a company. Talk to me about personally, how do you keep yourself organized? Because I think you travel by plane, but a lot of times I hear you're driving in the car and you're in a vehicle that you're traveling in. How do you stay on top of your entire business and manage it that way? Give some tips to some fellow road warriors out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first obvious is to have great people back here in the office, and helping them to understand or giving them the freedom to make decisions and not feel like they've got to run everything through you. And
so in closing, one of the things that I've asked people about is kind of how they see the industry over the next 5 to 10 years. What do you see? What are you looking out at? I mean, as the CEO of a company, you really can't, you are in the day-to-day, but you got to look 5, 10 years out. What does it look like for you in this industry? How do you see it changing?
Well, the biggest change I see is that we all know with the Amazon deliveries and all the deliveries that are starting to happen in the restaurant world, and you hear some argue against it that it's not going to happen, but it seems to me the shopping centers, the boxes that we climb on the roof of and change filters on, that at some point that has to be reducing. And when that happens, we also serve industrial and commercial buildings. And so somewhere in the future, I think my business or those like me are going to have to focus a little more attention towards industrial and heavy commercial than the extent that we're NFS is probably 75% restaurant retail today.
Yeah.
And I think over the coming years that's going to change some because the stores aren't going to be there as much.
Well, any parting words, any things that, certainly we're going to include your contact information. I know folks that might be listening to it would love to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, maybe about some of those other incentives or things that you're doing with your field team and how you manage them. You've been a great, successful company up to this point. And, I think by sharing our knowledge is another way we can continue to grow the industry and bring new people in and set up mentoring type relationships, either with another company or an individual. And I know based on what you're in my past discussions have been that you're open to kind of those relationships. You do coaching for different other things, sports and that type thing in your spare time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I'd love anything I can do. Advice-wise, I just see it all as relationships. We go to a trade show and we hang out with vendors, even vendors that are competitors.
Yeah.
We hang out with vendors as much or more than we do customers, and it's just getting to know people. And I think after a while you realize everybody's just people, and you don't have to put your big sales hat on, everybody's just good people trying to network and make contacts with good people that they can enjoy. And if you act that way and don't try to make it into something bigger and grander than it is, then I think it's more likely to work.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, Chris, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know it's going to be a great podcast, and folks can reach out to you at the contact information below.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us on today's podcast. Look for us every couple of weeks. Be sure to subscribe. Also, please share with everyone you know on all of your social media platforms. We would appreciate the promotion. And if you have ideas for guests or topics, we'd love to hear from you. Email me at troybatchelor@frenchcompanyllc.com, and we'll see you on the next podcast.